Hi guys, and welcome back to Sheddy's Kitchen. I'm Sheddy. Today we're looking at making a recipe. The long awaited recipe for me is a meat samosa recipe. Now you probably know what a samosa is, and you arguably have seen it across every single Indian restaurant menu that's out there. One thing I can promise you though is when you have samosas often in restaurants or when you have them in from takeaways directly, the filling on the inside isn't fantastic, and it's not often I would go out and actually buy them. You often find that the filling on the inside is a mush and a mix together of lots of stuff, so there's too much going on in terms of a lack of flavour, I would say. You can't clearly see what you're eating in there, and I'll be honest, that's actually the truth. So my mum's samosa recipe is legendary. For many years I've taken it for colleagues and friends, and every time one of the first things they say to me is, when's your mum making samosas again? So this recipe is out there in popular demand. This recipe in particular, Steve, this one is for you because you've been asking me now for a while to have this recipe on my channel, which I'm going to do for you. So are you ready? Let's get cooking. The first thing I'm going to show you is how to make the pastries for the samosas. So this is what we're going to be filling into, and for that you need 750 grams of plain flour, half a teaspoon of salt, three teaspoons of sunflower oil, and 500 mils, and this is quite important, of warm water. It must be warm. So for the filling, it's a meat filling we're using for these samosas. You're going to need the following. You need 1 kilogram of minced lamb. Now we washed the minced lamb, but you don't need to. $275 grams of onions. We've chopped these slightly larger. Now I'm going to be introducing more onions later on, but I've done it in order of when you put it into the dish, and we cut them slightly smaller. So I will mention that in the ingredient list a bit later again, and I'll show you on screen again. So in total you'll find that you'll need 475 grams of onion, but 275 grams of that will be in slightly larger pieces here. $500 mils of cold water, seven green chilies that have been chopped. We've not made them too small. As you can see, we've sliced them down lengthways, and we've just chopped them into approximately about 3/4 of a centimeter pieces. .5 teaspoons of red chili powder, half a teaspoon of turmeric powder, that's your haldi, one and a half teaspoons of salt, $200 mils of sunflower oil, 750 grams of parboiled potato. So these are half boiled. You need to do that before you actually get to the cooking stage. You can see that we've actually diced these into quite small pieces, and that's what you need to really go for here. ,450 grams of peas. Now what we've done with these are frozen, so we've actually just boiled these and then allowed them to drain. If you're using normal peas as well, you should do similar, because they're quite hard at the start. You want to just get them to bring them to a boil and then allow them to drain off on the side. So that's 450 grams of that. ,285 grams of sweet corn. Now why the value for that is specific is not actually that important. It's because we took that off, we drained a tin, and the net weight of that was 285 grams. So it's up to you how much you use, but we're just using one tin amount, which was 285 grams. ,25 grams of fresh chopped coriander. ,1 teaspoon of coriander powder. ,1.5 teaspoons of cumin powder, that's known as jeera. ,1/2 teaspoon of ground black pepper. And lastly, you will need the second part of the onions. I said it's 200 grams of onions, and we've actually chopped them into smaller pieces. So we're going to start off making the pastries for the samosas. I'd advise you to do this an hour before you actually start making the samosas themselves, because you need the dough to settle once it's made. If you do make it first anyway, by the time you've actually had a go at making the meat and cooking the meat, it'll take about an hour. So that'll be absolutely fine if you do that in that way, but make sure you do this process first. So I've added 750 grams of the plain flour to this bowl over here. To it, I want to add half a teaspoon of salt, which I'll do now, and we will also add to this approximately 3 teaspoons of sunflower oil. It's quite useful adding the sunflower oil early. I've mentioned it before in other recipes as well, or I've added it as a hint a bit later on, that if you add the sunflower oil to the mixture, it just makes the handling of it a lot easier. So there you go. I've popped in 3 teaspoons. You may find that at the end, when you are making the samosa, and we advise you to how many samosas this makes, that you might end up with more flour at the end. That's then how much meat we filled with. If it's the case that you've got excess flour at the end, what I would advise you to do is quite simply use it to make chapatis or something, or keep it on the side. You can make other stuff with it, but it's likely that's going to be the case. I'm going to give that a tiny bit of a mix. I've got 500 ml of water over here. Make sure that water is warm, and we might need more than 500 ml. You'll find I've wrote in the recipe guide just initially have 500 ml. It might be that we need more. It's all dependent on when we mix this together how dry the mixture still is. So I'll add half of this 500 ml of water now, just half of it. There you go. I'm going to start giving that a bit of a mix, and really mixing the dry bits in and almost breading it, as you can see in your fingers straight away. So we'll do that initially. Really breaking that up, and I'll add more water in a moment. So if you do start with the initial 500, have that measured out. If we do need more, we'll just add a bit more, but do make sure it's warm though. That's the important thing here to actually know. We'll add a bit more in there. Give that a mix again. We're just slowly introducing that water bit by bit. It can be quite deceptive when you work with flour, because it feels like it's not really mixing, but you'll see that it's actually starting to really stick together. Just add a bit more. It's starting to harden a lot better now. Still a lot of dry areas, but we do have some water. We're going to add more to that yet. Remember, it's not the end of the world if you end up adding too much water anyway, because essentially you can always add more plain flour. It's not going to damage the recipe itself. Add some more water there. Got flour going everywhere. Now, here we go, just give it a roll without kneading. Normally I do it with 2 hands. I'm just showing it with 1 hand to prevent the bowl from moving off camera. I'm just holding on with 1 hand and just getting that kneaded. Let's just take off this onto there, add it to the mixture as well, and that should be done. There we go. Now you can pop that away for approximately an hour, so make sure you put that out of the way, and you can start preparing now to make the mixture for the samosas. Right, the first thing we've done is we've washed out our meat and we put it straight into the pan ready there. What you need to do is to go onto a high heat, and I'm using over here a relatively large pan because there's a lot of ingredients that's going to go into there. Clearly, if you decide to decrease the amounts in your ingredient, if you're making a smaller batch, you won't need a pan as large. To that, what we need to add is the onions, and it's the large pieces of onions that I originally said in the recipe, so 275 grams of that. Pop that into there. And to that we want to add 500 ml of cold water. All this just goes straight in, there's no worrying about it cooking originally. Your green chilies go straight into there as well. Just pop all them in there. And to that we'll add the 1.5 teaspoons of red chili powder. You'll need half a teaspoon of your turmeric powder, which is the haldi, and 1.5 teaspoon here of the salt. And after this point, what you need to do is give this a good mix. So we'll give that a nice mix now, make sure it's all mixed in. And this is a relatively straightforward process, because what we do once this is mixed is you need to leave this now to cook away. And I will be guessing this because it depends on the pan that you have, and obviously we want the meat to start cooking. So now this is actually, we've just put this all in and we give it a good mix. What we need to do at this point over here, we're leaving it for about 15 minutes or so to cook away. So I am going to come back to this. Make sure you come back at 10-minute point, so time it for 10 minutes, give it a mix so the mixture doesn't stick to the bottom of the pan, and then leave it for a further 5. In the next part of the clip I will actually let you know how long we actually left ours for, so you get some sort of an indicator to how long. So I'm approximately saying 15 to 20 minutes, but I will give you the actual timing as soon as I come back to this and check it. Make sure also that you pop the lid directly onto this and leave that now for that time period. So it's actually been a lot longer than anticipated. I've come back a few times over to the pan and had a look, because we originally washed the mince. We need to make sure that the water actually goes down. So it's been 40 minutes. I did mention I was going to mention that in the cooking process itself. It's been 40 minutes that's been boiling away. As you can see, the water is nearly down and finished and evaporated off now. We've nearly boiled all that water off. What I'm going to add to this now is the oil, 200 ml of oil. And what I need to do is give this a bit of a mix, and I'm going to leave this, I'm going to mix it for a bit. And what I'm aiming to do over here is to, hopefully the meat will start to change colour, and that's our next indicator. So I'll mix this around for a bit before we add the next ingredients. Give that a nice mix. So now I've added the oil in there. I'm going to come back to this in approximately 10 minutes time, and then we'll have a look at where we're at from there. So it has been about 15 minutes. What you should be doing in between all along is just keep mixing this. It doesn't matter if it sticks fully to the bottom. We have got areas that is sticking, but we're not adding water to this. We're trying to make sure that we keep mixing this all the way through that process. Like I said, this has been going on now since we added the oil. It's been about 15 minutes. You should just keep mixing this. We're waiting for this oil, we're waiting for all the liquid in the water to disappear now. You can see that the mince is becoming a lovely brown colour at the moment. We want to make sure that meat is completely cooked through. So just keep giving it a mix. That's quite important to do that. Right, I can see the oil bubbling up to the top surface now. You can see the meat has gone quite a dark brown colour over here. It's cooking well. I'm going to add now to this the potato, the peas and the sweet corn. I've mixed the sweet corn with the potatoes as they were being parboiled, just to just to warm them up a bit as I put it into the mixture, so they're already warm. It doesn't matter if you don't do it that way, it makes no difference. You can add your sweet corn later on. So I've added the potato to that. I'll also add the peas in here as well. Now I'm going to give that a nice mix. Really mix that up. I'm going to leave this now for 5 minutes, but make sure you keep mixing this for the next 5 minutes, and then we'll come back to the next stage after that point. So my pan's moving a bit all over the show there. There you go. So now I'll mix that. I'll keep mixing it. Keep mixing that for the next 5 minutes or so. Okay, now so what I'm going to do is turn off the gas on this. It's been cooking away for about 15 minutes, and we'll be mixing that thoroughly as we go through. The final bit of the ingredients don't need to be cooked, they need to be mixed in. So I'm going to add into there the 25 grams of the fresh coriander. The coriander powder, we need 1 teaspoon of that in there. One and a half teaspoons of the cumin powder, so that's your jeera. Remember, that's ground cumin powder. We need half a teaspoon of the ground black pepper. And finally, if you remember, we had the onions that were the small pieces at the beginning. It's 200 grams of that. I'm going to pop that into there as well. And what we're going to do is just give it a real nice mix. And it's done. The recipe will be done. I'll give that a mix now. And then we'll be complete over there. Make sure you really mix it well so that you get an even distribution of the spices that we added at the end and the onions. The reason why we put the onions in there at the end and at the start ones will actually break down and soften, whereas it's nice to have them pieces of onion in the samosas themselves when you're eating it. And that's now done. So we're going to start with making some of these the pastry we need for the samosa, so in circle balls of dough. So what we do over here, you need plain flour again. I'm just going to get some plain flour and pop it onto the surface over here. Just a bit more, there you go. And just make sure your hands are powdered up slightly. With the dough mixture you've got that's been settling away for about an hour, you need to just roll out a tiny bit, and you'll notice here I'm using quite a small amount. I'll show you there's a small amount I'm using over there. My hands are relatively small, so that's not too large. Just give that a nice roll, and we'll pop that onto the surface here and just give it a press down. I'll do the same the other way, and I'll just actually pull out the outside of the bit here, just thin it out slightly like that. Just easier to roll when you do that, and we'll begin rolling that now. Make sure it keeps nice and floury at the bottom so it doesn't stick. But we do get them edges. If the edges are thick, you can come to the edge and just pull them out there. You can actually just work it around. So there you go. Turn that slightly. Just really thin out the edges. Where the edges are quite thick, you can just roll them out, no problem. We'll just roll them out into the circle there. And that's done. That'll be ready to move on now. Don't worry if they're not a perfect circle. The dough actually, it stretches quite well, so when you lift it up and you give it a bit of shake off, it will get that circle structure. You can stretch it out there, but that's ready to go. So for this now, next bit, we're going to get this dough and start baking that onto this, we call it a tava. You can get it from any South Asian supermarket or shop. Just asking, it's like a hot plate, but we call it tava. We make our roti on it. We make our chapatis, our parathe. We make it all on this. That's what you require. So you get you want to grab your rolled out dough, pop that straight on to here. It's nice and hot now. We just give that a moment to cook through. It won't take that long. We'll just give it a second. You can see the bubbles rising to the surface on the top already. And you can see the colour change at the top as well of that. Just give it a moment. You'll see that this tends to cook very, very quickly as well. Okay, I'm going to turn that around now. It's got a lovely colour there, you can see it cooking through. I'll turn that around on the other side. Next stage, I'm going to be a bit gentle. When this is made, I'm going to score it down the centre because I want to cut it in half. So I'm using this purely as a guide with my hand. But I want to score this down. I don't want to damage the hot plate underneath. Normally we do it with an older hot plate, but I'll score that down the centre. And that's done. I can take that straight off. That's now completed. So we're at the final stage of the prep now, where we actually get the pastries and make them into this samosa with the filling inside prior to frying. These pastries that we made, the half that we've cooked, we've just kept them wrapped up in some cloth to make sure they stay relatively warm and steamed. What I'll also just very quickly show you is this mixture over here, and this mixture is going to act as our glue. We've made this from plain flour and water. You want to leave it relatively thick because it needs to stick the samosas down. If it's too thin and the samosa opens up, then when you're frying, you're going to have real issues with all your oil being spoiled and all your the inside of the stuffing coming out of the samosas basically, and you don't want that happening. So we've got that relatively thick over there, and what you do at this stage, you get your half. You get your half over here that we've got, and obviously you're gonna end up making the samosa shape on here anyway. So what I'd advise you to do is, if you want to make it easier on yourself, you can keep it as a half like that over. We're used to doing it holding and doing it, but what you want to do is get the outside and leave it nice and thick with this. And use your finger for this; it's just easier. Nice and thick from the outside like that with this glue paste that we made, and then you want the inside corner, and the same thing applies. Get it nice and thick there, really stick it, and you want to fold this over, and this bit's quite important, and you want to really press this down, really press it down as tight as you can into this circle like you can see over here. Really press it down, make sure there's no gaps in between, squeeze the top quite tight as well so that doesn't open, but squeeze this down and you're getting this cone like structure now, and from there you can hold this cone like structure like this, and we can add the mixture to the inside. So what we're going to fill this with. So normally, just when you're adding it to the samosa, make sure you've got a bit of everything in there, because your mixture might be slightly non-uniform, and if you just get a bit, you want to pop the mix into there like that. I'll just show you. You don't want to go too far to the top, whatever you do, because you won't be able to close the samosa. So be careful. I know there's a tendency to get more filling in, but I would say probably be at that much. I've used about 2.5 tablespoons, no more than that. And from this point over here, you can close the samosa up. And what you do with that is use the same paste you're using before, run it around, right around. And again, don't worry about using a small amount. Make sure you really thickly put that on there. So there you go, nice and thick. And what we do over here now is quite simply, and I'll make it so that the pattern looks a bit nicer. We'll leave the fold in there in the middle because that looks quite nice. Press it down really tight. I always use my fingers. If you really want to be a bit more artsy with this, once you've squeezed this down with your fingers and you've closed them, you can use a fork at the end just to score it so it looks a bit more nice and patterned. That's purely up to you, but I'll be honest with you, when we make samosas at home, we make them in batches of like 200 and we put them into the freezer. You'll soon give up with using a fork to start making them look fancy, especially when it's for home cooking really, and you're doing that. So that's how you would make the samosa. There you go. When these are made, like I said, you can put them and freeze them and then make them at a later date, but make sure, most importantly, that you press them really tight. I mean, I've spent a lot longer than that when we're churning these out, when we're making them, we quickly tighten them, stick them. It's so that the samosa doesn't open up while it's frying. And that's one made for you over there. I'll show you. I'll pop that to the side, and we're going to make about 8 or 9 more, and then we'll show you how to fry that. Right, we've come to the stage now where we need to fry these samosas. I've got the oil heated up that we're using, sunflower oil over here. That's heating up in the pan nicely. And we're going to pop about 6 into there to show you a batch of 6 being made. So just carefully and gently pop these. You can see the oil's been warming up for a while. If you need to test that oil to see how it works, you're always dropping a tiny bit of, a tiny ball of flour or the mixture that you were using as the glue into there. And if it rises straight to the surface, you know that the oil is actually ready. So I'm just going to pop them in one by one. So we'll put in 6 first. Just careful as you do this. go there, our first 6 in there. Separate them out slightly. So it's been about 2 minutes or so, probably a bit longer than that, but yeah, need to turn them. I'm just going to turn each of these now the other way. You see they're starting to become a lovely brown on one side. Get them all turned. And the last one. There we go. Just going to turn them again. It's been a few minutes again. Just turn them around again. You'll see now that we are getting that lovely golden colour. Is what we're looking out for. This is not about the cooking of the meat. The meat's already been cooked. It's just getting that pastry nice, golden and crisp, which they are starting to look like now. Looking really nice. You can see now we've got a lovely brown colour over here, so it's lovely golden brown colour. I'm going to remove them now, and you want to just make sure you drain them. So I've put some tissue into a tray on the side, and I'm just going to pop them samosas directly into there to drain off. Make sure the oil is all fully drained. The oil can be quite stodgy if it's in there, so we'll just drain it off gently over there, and I will pop them into there to just drain off. The last two, give them a drain. There you go. So look at this, it looks absolutely amazing. What we've made with it as well is a chutney to go. If you want the recipe for the chutney, it's in our channel guide as well. So just find the coriander chutney recipe. It should really always be eaten with this chutney anyway. So time to get the seal of approval from my parents. You know, I'm really glad of that one, seal of approval met. It took a lot of time making that, and it was done step by step to make it absolutely easy for you to follow as well. So if you want to make sure you are finding more videos that you want to follow off mine, you click that notification bell. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Do it in the other order. Subscribe first and then click that notification bell. And hopefully I'll see you soon.